So how are we all doing? Shall I give myself a little bit of a background? I've been trading for probably 5 to 10 years. I've been doing market geometry for probably about 5. I learnt my market geometry from a guy called Paul Coughlin, and it was to do with futures, sorry, with FX. So it was all doing Euro, USD, pound, and all that. So he taught me basically how to trade with trend lines. So, oh, did he? I didn't know that Paul used to trade with Tim. Oh, interesting. So their ideas are very similar. So what Paul was all about was about finding the angle of the market. So you use your Andrew's pitchforks to trend lines to channels. It was Paul Coughlin. So I think he's got a website, coughlincapital.com, something like that. So what Paul was about was trying to find the angle or the slope of the market. Coughlin. And I'll see if I can find his website. Coughlin Capital. I'll just paste that into HipChat for you. So Paul still does his own thing, but his focus really is on Forex trading. Yeah, he does have a YouTube channel as well, but basically he has a subscriber service and he does do a little bit of futures, but his main focus is Forex. So he does his daily analysis and does a video and basically says where his analysis of the markets in different timeframes, from weeklies to dailies to like a 4-hourly chart and say a 20-minute chart. So in his analysis and the way that he looks at market geometry is that he's trying to find the slope or the angle of the market using the different tools. So because basically using a Andrew's pitchfork or any of those, it's just the tool to work out the slope of the market. So if you get the slope right, the slope will last for a longer period of time. So I don't need to redraw as often. And then you copy the angle of the market that you've got. And then you use those sliding parallel lines to judge the strength of the market. So for example, I could take a 3-minute chart here and we say, all right, well, let's go along and see, is there anything that stands out to you when you're looking at this particular market? So I'm looking at the highs and lows and saying, all right, well, is there a slope in play? So for me at the moment, it's going down, but there's nothing really that stands out to me when I look at that 3-minute chart at the moment. I could draw some trend lines, but there's nothing that really stands out and grabs me, but we can try anyway. So using the different tools that Dan's got. Yeah. What does it say? So then once I've done that one, then for example, I would do a copy of it. And then I would move this line around to see whether the slope is actually in play. So by drawing those sliding parallels, you can actually see that these highs and lows are actually now giving me a certain angle to this particular market that I'm looking at on a 3-minute chart. So then I could continue to use this and I'd say, all right, well, what's actually happening? What's the strength of the market in this current trend that I've drawn on here. It's Chris. Kevin, my name's Chris Eves. I'm an Aussie and I live in Hong Kong. So anyway, God, I hope not. Don't know who I sound like. But anyway, so going back to the 3-minute chart here, so you can just see by doing some simple analysis on this chart here on a 3-minute chart, I've got a general idea or current slope that I'm looking at. I haven't drawn in anything else from Elliott wave or anything else. I've just drawn in to see what the current angle of the market is and the strength of it in that trend. So if you look at it here, these lows were holding at the bottom of this trend channel. And then if I had the sliding parallel above, it was acting as resistance. So then we broke above the sliding parallel and then we came to test it from above and then it became support. And then we came back up to this area that we'd marked. Like I know I draw this in after the fact. So it's really now would be looking to see what's going to happen in the future here. So coming back, I would have thought now I would be looking for the market to come back down to the sliding parallel line that I'd previously drawn in. So it didn't quite get back to it. So what does that tell me? Well, if the market can't actually come back to an area of support and resistance, it means that it's gaining strength. So it's come back up to the top of the trend channel here. So because it's got this strength, I would actually expect it to breach this line and then continue higher. So I'd finish off with that chart and then I'd say, all right, well, let's have a look at another chart. So we go to another time frame. So let's see if I can figure out how to show one of my other screens. Let's have a look. Which one do I want? This one. So does that show my 5-minute and tick chart? Okay. All right, sorry guys, I'm a bit tired. I've been up since 6 o'clock this morning flying down to Bangkok and back. So, and I've already had a glass of wine. So I'm not trading, but I'm happy to have a bit of a chat and show you guys what I'm thinking anyway. So looking at the 5-minute chart, so we'd then go through and do our analysis exactly the same as what we did on the 3-minute chart. So we come through and say, all right, well, what's the current trend of the market? All right, so if I was just to draw, if I was drawing Andrew's pitchforks on here, I would say, for example, use maybe this high to the low to this high. But using Dan's tools makes it a little bit easier. So you just grab it in. Actually, no, that's not going to work. So wrong angle on that one. So let's have a look. So you've just got to keep drawing. Basically, with market geometry, it's just trial and error. But the more you do it, the more your eye will become attuned to, why is that not? I'll try it again. The more your eye will come attuned to looking at the angle of the market and picking the slope. So you can use, for me, I tend to prefer to use the absolute highs and lows of a chart. I know Dan's been using sometimes the close or the low of a particular bar. That's, for me, not the way that I was taught. I will only use, for example, the close of a bar in picking a high or a low is if the market geometry actually lines up and confirms itself at a later point of time. So didn't look particularly good on that. Does that make sense? Well, Trevor, you've just got to keep drawing until you find the slope of the market where the highs and lows are meeting up with, for example, with your sliding parallel lines that you've copied in. So if you've drawn that line and you can move it around like we did on that 3-minute chart, and it meets up and it's butting heads up against those support and resistance lines. And the best ones is where support turns into resistance and vice versa. Does that make sense? So it's all about finding that angle of what you're doing. So we've just got to basically just keep drawing until we find something that's in play. I don't know what's happening with my drawing tool here, but it's, I'm just going to hit F5 for a sec. Clicking on the points and it's not doing it. All right, so let's try this again. So this might be an example in this one where we could try, that doesn't look too bad. So we could draw in another array line. Didn't work, let's try it again. Not having much luck today with my array lines. That'll teach me for having a drink after work. All right. So copy that, move it around. So this is actually coming back to, remember what I said on the 3-minute chart, that I actually expected it to break. That's actually the same slope as what we had on the 3-minute chart that we draw in just a few minutes ago. So you can actually see it. Remember how I said I thought that it was actually going to breach the top of the trend line? So it's exactly done exactly that. So I've got my slope again on the 5-minute chart. So our resistance has turned into support, and now we're coming up to breach the top of that trend line. So for me at the moment, we're having a slight trend change. So I'll be starting to look for a new trend to the upside. All right. So we might get the market move up and then come back and give a quick kiss goodbye and then continue on another trend to the upside. Or we could just try drawing in a channel. So we could try drawing in something speculative, but you don't know until you try. I'd probably just leave that on for just the time being until we get more of an idea of where it's going to go. My personal opinion, it'd probably go to close to the previous close on that 5-minute bar. And you've actually can see we've actually got the setup signal as well on the 5-minute chart. All right, so this is all I do. When I come to the market, I just go through and I do the exact analysis on all of my charts. So then I come through and I look at the tick chart. So, and then I draw in my trend channel on here. Let's, yeah. But it all just comes down with practice. And learning market geometry is just spending time in front of the screen, just drawing lines and seeing where it works and where it doesn't work. That's probably the best advice that I can give you. All right, let's see what else we can draw for the moment. Excuse for a sec. All right. So I'll just mute my phone, guys. Can you hear my phone going off in the background? All right, so let's have a look and see what else we can draw in. So guys, I'm just be a bit quiet while I'm just looking at the charts here to see if there's anything that's popping out at me. All right. I'm just trying to think of what else I can tell you guys on the way that I trade. It's I guess the basics is, as I've been saying, is you come down and you're looking for that angle on this or the slope on the market, and you keep drawing. I'm just trying to think of another example of where I would draw in another pitchfork or something like that. Hang on. Losing my train of thought. Been yabbering all day. What's my entry criteria? All right, well, this is probably another thing that I need to talk about of the way that I was taught to trade as well, is that normally if you're going with the direction of the slope or the trend of the market, so you, for example, on this 5-minute chart here, if you are able to pick up this slope beforehand, I know we've drawn it in retrospect, but if you are able to draw it in beforehand, you would only trade in the direction of the trend. So, for example, if you'd come up here, then you would be looking in to get in for another short position where you'd get your signals. So, because you want time to be on your side, because if you were to get into a trade here, as time goes on, what happens to your targets? Your targets get further away from you, from your entry point. So time's actually working in your favor. All right, and same if you want it with your stop. As time progresses, your stop is getting safer and safer. Does that make sense? So when you take trades against the current slope, as for example, let's say we wanted to buy the market at this climax down here. If I was to buy here, as time goes on, my potential targets of where I can make money is actually reducing. So you've got to decide on which markets you're trading, which chart you're actually going to take your entries off and what your targets are. So for example, if I'm trading off areas on a 20-minute chart and it's a downsloping trend, I want to take trades to the downside. But on the 5-minute chart, it could be the exact opposite and it could be an upslope. All right. So even though, and you've got slopes within slopes. So whenever you draw a channel, you're going to have micro channels within the channel. So, but don't try and go too minute on drawing the channels and the angle of the market, because if you go to too small a time frame, it just gets, you get too much noise and it's too confusing. All right. So the higher the time frame, generally the more clarity you have in the current trend direction, but it takes more time to establish in that direction. Yeah. So I haven't marked up any charts today because basically I just got home from work, had dinner with the family, and then I like taking my dog out for a walk before trading starts. So I'm generally out walking the dog when Dan kicks off the room, but normally get back and start having a look and sit down with you guys for the evening. So then I'd have it, grab another chart. So let's look at some higher time frames again to see if we can get another perspective of what's going on with the market. So let's have a look at, say, let's have a look at, say, a 15-minute chart. All right. So if you guys are looking at that, which way is the trend? Is it up or down? To me, when I'm looking at it, well, it's still in a fairly significant downtrend. All right. But remember, whenever you draw a line on a chart, you create bias. All right. So I can draw a, for example, on here. Let's have a look and see if I can find an example of where you create bias on a chart. I'll have to do it this way. Oh, it's the wrong one, sorry. What's the trend channel? All right, so by drawing this on the chart now, all right, you would say we're in the downtrend, yes? So the market was respecting this trend channel, so it came down. You could have even drawn this trend channel in quite early at this point here, and then you would have had an area of support that was found automatically down the bottom. We can then draw in a ray line off here. Let's see. Come on. And let's have a look. Is this in play? All right. So if we go back, say hard right edge, and we're looking at this particular market. All right. So you could say, right, we're in our downtrend. So this is where we got our first area of support. So where would we expect the market to go to? So we would expect the market to come back up to a previous area of resistance. So for example, in this one, it could be here, or even maybe slightly lower back around the midpoint of the channel. So we come along, what happens? So this is, we got a little bit of sideways action. It didn't quite get up to our area or our sliding parallel line, and it's gone up and breached above it. So now I'd still be looking higher and saying, all right, well, are we going to come to the other side of the channel? So we didn't quite make it. So there was actually no entry for me. I would have been looking for an entry up to the higher side here. But because it didn't get as high, I would actually be saying, well, that's now more strength to the downside. So I would expect it to continue trading to the downside, which it has. It's come back. It's bounced off the lower parallel again. What did it do? Because we couldn't make it to the other side. Now, the one way Paul used to teach. He used to say, imagine your channel or the angle of the market that you've got. So we've got, this is the angle that we did. So imagine it's like a runner on a treadmill. So this is the energy of the market. So how's our runner doing? How far up and backwards on the treadmill is he going? Is he able to get to the front of the treadmill, or is he losing ground and falling off the back of the treadmill? So if he's trying to outrun the treadmill, well, he's gaining strength. If he's going to the back, he's losing momentum. So that's the same thing when you're looking at the angle and momentum of the market. So you can see here, because we weren't able to make it to the other side of the trend line, so that's actually a sign of weakness in the market. So when we came back down to the bottom here, all right, we actually didn't hold it, and then we actually breached lower, but we would have actually expected that when it came back down. And then what happened here from this previous support and resistance line? Resistance, 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 breached right through it, support, then came up, resistance again, and then it breached down and went lower. All right, so where did we come to? In drawing a standard channel on here, we've gone to the first quartile, so, or the midpoint of the next channel, and we've found support off here. All right, but for me at the moment, even though this is a downtrend, well, we say, all right, well, do we need to draw in a new fork yet? You could. We could, for example, draw in a new channel from here to here, and then see if that's working for a while. All right. Do you think, looking at that particular fork or channel, do you think that shows the highs and lows or the angle of the market? What do you guys think? No. So it's not representative. So if I was to draw another sliding parallel line with that particular slope, it wouldn't meet up very well with the highs and lows on that chart, would it? So to me, that's not giving the correct angle or momentum of the market, so I would delete it. All right? So we'd keep watching the market and say, all right, well, what's happened now? We've come back, and this would almost be, we've come back up to test this support resistance line. So let's try to get up above it, failed, tried once again, come back down, and then it's turned up and finally managed to get itself up above that particular point again. So where did it go to though? So if the market was screaming back to the upside here, where would be the first place that you'd be looking for resistance to come into the market? You would be looking at this point here first, all right, and then you would be looking at the other side of the channel. But with all these things, you need confirmation. You just can't look at one chart and take an entry off one chart. And that's where Dan's tools come in to their own. You're looking at what's happening with your volume. All right. When you come back up to the top here, would it be a spike in volume? All right. What is the volume telling you as it gets to that particular point? So on this 15-minute chart, it's a fairly big chart, but I'm pretty sure we went down to a 5-minute chart or something like that, we'd actually see some other action in there that we may have actually been able to get into a short position. So then where we find support again, back down. I know it's a little bit sloppy, but we could have actually drawn in that sliding parallel line again down to the bottom, and that's acted as the support area again. So now we've managed to get to the other side of the channel again, and what have we done? We've managed to get up through the market, and then this is a very small kiss goodbye. So where would we be looking at our first resistance to the upside? We would be looking at the quartile and maybe the other side of the trend channel. But on seeing this, the break of this area here, to me, is the first sign of strength coming back into the market. It's actually managed to come back down off the quartile and it's then coming back up to here. So if you were off your smaller time frames, if we'd actually managed to draw in an appropriate channel, let's just see if we'd been doing it at the time, whether there was actually a channel in play or not. Maybe. Probably might have drawn in that one. But here, so the market's now come up to the top to our warning area and it's come back down again. But looking at the market now, would you say we're in an uptrend or a downtrend? Up. So the market's changed to an uptrend. All right. But we're still going down, aren't we? So I was able to use my previous areas by keeping this channel on my chart for longer. I was actually able to help me what's going on with the market. So a support and resistance line has worked multiple times. Would you agree? So yes, we're in a downtrend and now we've turned up, but now we need to try and find the correct angle or slope to the upside. Now this is the tricky bit. All right, so now we need to start drawing channels again while still using our old channel for possible support and resistance areas. And sometimes you just need to wait. Until something stands out at you. Well, there we are, we're at current market action. But looking at it just now, all right, so where do you guys expect it to go from here? Would you expect it to come back down lower? Or would you expect it to price to go higher? Where do you think, Tim? Where do you think it's going to come back down to? Yeah, it's basically, it's almost consolidating sideways. If I was to take, I can't actually hide all that stuff, I don't think. Oh, there we are. So if I was to take all the channels off and you're just looking at that, it's just sideways, isn't it? All right, but from our previous channels that we had drawn in, you could see that we were in a downtrend, but now it's breached up to the top of the channel and up to the warning line, and then it's trying to find support on the top of that trend channel. Yes, we're grinding lower, but the market has had a change in behavior from the way I see it, as that it's now trying to find a way to go higher. Am I making sense to anyone? Or am I just saying dribble? Yeah. So let's have a look. So if we hide all the things, I think sometimes you just need to hide all of your information and then draw afresh to see if something stands out to you. Because remember what I said, if once you draw that line on the chart, you create bias. All right. So sometimes you need to remove the bias from a chart and then look at it afresh and see what you see. So just using the current market in here, does anyone see any channels that pop out at them from any swing highs or lows? For me at the moment, I've still got the only trend is really still to the downside, isn't it? On a very shorter time frame. So it depends on how big a scale you're trying to look at when you're taking your trades. Are you looking at all the information from the bigger trend lines, or are you scaling down to a micro channel? Where to, Bobby? Oh, you want me to go back further or on a different chart? Right there. Yeah. Expanding flat. Yeah, maybe a little bit. All right. Did you want to take it back then, Dan, and go over your stuff, or you want me to keep gibbering on for a while? You guys vote. You want me to gibber or you want Dan back? All right, I'll keep gibbering on for a bit longer then. Shall we look at some other charts then? All right, so one thing that I like is I do like tick charts. All right, because tick charts take basic time out of the analysis. Yeah, I'd like to look at DAX too, Patrick, but it's probably for another time, I think. So with tick charts, this is probably not a great example because there's so many gaps from yesterday being the RTH chart. But market geometry works fantastic on tick charts. The only charts that I can't seem to get market geometry lining up very well with would be range charts. I don't know what it is about range charts. You can draw it in and they work for a short period of time, but they just don't seem to give that longer projection or analysis of what I'm trying to find. So as I've tried to portray to you guys, when I draw a channel on a market, I'm looking for that trend to stay in for a longer period of time. You can draw in trends for a very short period of time, but it's not going to give you the momentum of the market. So let's just go back to, let's just see if we can find something on this larger tick chart. Actually, which might go back to the something that's got a bit more movement on it, the 699, which is, let me find it. Yeah. All right. Okay, so you guys can now see my 233 and the 699 tick. All right. So let's have a look on this particular chart and then see if we can draw any channels or geometry on here of anything that's working. Admittedly, over the years, I've probably used a lot more Andrews pitchforks and the modifications of them between Schiff and mod Schiff. So does everyone understand the difference between the two or the three, between a normal pitchfork and a Schiff and a mod Schiff? Well, basically a standard pitchfork is your A, B, C. So your starting point, and then your B, and then the C. All right. Drawing a pitch, I can't draw a pitchfork the other way because, well, with it being in the standard methodology, you can't draw it A, B, C. That's not the way, my interpretation, that it needs to be drawn. If you're in a downtrend, the B needs to be lower than the A. All right. So, but the A point doesn't necessarily have to be the highest point on the chart. So for example, I could draw in, that's not a good example there. Let's see if I can find a better example. Where it's not the lowest point. It's not a great example, but say I was drawing in from there to there. So that wouldn't be the lowest point on the chart in an uptrend. But the A, B, and then the C. So getting back to the difference between them is we'll draw in our Andrews pitchfork over here from the A, B, and the C. Everyone happy with that? So when you change it, you can double click on it and bring up the properties. If I change this to a Schiff, what happens to the starting of the A point? It moves, doesn't it? It moves down. And if I change it to a mod Schiff, it moves down and forwards. So what it's doing is, just to go back a little bit. So a Schiff pitchfork moves 50% in price from your A to your B. So if you were to draw a horizontal line out here, I'll have to cancel that. You would see that the A point would have moved 50% down in terms of price. All right. Now, that is for a Schiff pitchfork. Now, when I change it to a modified Schiff, look what happens to the A starting point. We've also now moved 50% forward in time. All right, so can everyone see that? So see how with a modified Schiff, we've moved 50% down in price and also shifted 50% forward in time. So that's really the difference between the three pitchforks. So with a standard pitchfork, it's just going off your central line. Now the central line is called your median line. Okay. Now the median line is basically the angle that we're trying to get from the market. So we're using, it doesn't matter whether you're using an Andrews pitchfork or a standard trend line, all we're trying to do is use the tools available to find that angle. Now, Andrews and the modifications of it with the Schiff and mod Schiff have basically tried to make it easier to common relationships that happen. So hence why we would change it between the different ones. Yeah. So if I was drawing a standard pitchfork here, so we've got there is only one median line, and that is the central line. Every other line on the other side is just a copy of the median line or the central pivot or median line is another way to look at it. So when we copy, well, the way that I was taught is basically you're copying that angle or slope of the market and then you're moving it around to see on top of the highs and lows. All right, so let's see if we can find, so anything from back here. So this would have been, I'm trying to do it more as hard right edge as if you were doing it in real time. So this was the trend and we were going up. All right, we came and we breached the bottom of the trend channel and then gone further, and then we've gone back to the warning area or the warning line. So I would be starting to look for a trend change. So say, all right, well, can I see anything that stands out on there at the moment? All right, well, I've got a very small channel down here. So you could maybe start at the top and you're drawing your channel down there, but it hasn't lasted very long, has it? So it's basically come up, we've drawn that in and it hasn't respected it on the other side. All right, so it's gone up and it's breached again. So that's not really the angle of the market in play. So then we'd come through and we'd say, all right, well, you're just going to have to, sometimes you just need to wait until the market shows you what the trend is or what the angle of the market is. You can't always force it, but tick charts do help because you've taken that time element out of it. You basically could take the overnight session out of the market where it hasn't moved, and it's actually giving you the true representation of what's actually the price is doing and where it's moving to. All right, so we could come down and we've got another little high here with a spike. So we could say, all right, well, let's draw in another channel there and let's see if that's working. Or you could draw in a small little Andrews. Can't seem to get the top of that today. I think it's with the all right. So you could draw in hard right edge and you'd have this on the chart. So where would I be expecting the market to go to when you draw on a pitchfork? You're expecting it to come back to the median line. So we don't know whether this is in play yet, but more often than not, 80% of the time, when you draw it in, it would come back towards this central median line. Boom, down it comes. So now we've got to look and say, right, well, we need confirmation of what's happening in this market. So before I've actually gone too far, I would have actually drawn in, once I've drawn in that particular channel, I would have had a look to say, all right, well, is it working? Is it not working? All right, are the highs and lows being respected at any particular time? Because if they are being respected, that means that I've got a very early indication that I've found the right slope. So the sooner that you find the slope, the sooner that you'll be able to get into a trade. And then it should stay there for longer. So we could do that one. We could also copy in the actual Pitchfork itself and then move that around. It's close. It's not too bad. We've got resistance, resistance, breached up above it. It's found support and it's testing that area and it's currently gone below. So it would be early days, but it's showing promise with both of the channels on the chart. Do you guys agree? So then we keep going along and saying, all right, well, what type of trade do you think we should be looking at? Do you think we should be looking at a long trade or a short trade? I'm not looking at volume or anything else if you're just looking at pure market geometry. So you think a long, short, short? Okay, so Bobby's looking for a long. So we've got probably more shorts. Okay, all right. So where do you think you would be looking for a short? Would we be looking for a short of this area or this area? Or would you be looking for a long to go back up? So remember, for me, I prefer to go in the direction of the trend. We could find support or get a bounce off this line. Okay, so we could, if we had confirmation from another chart and we had a spike in volume and say you were looking at the 1 minute chart and this was a climax on volume, then you've had a low volume test and a flush below the line. So yes, it could be a long signal. But as time goes on, what's going to happen to your profit target if this is the slope of the market? It's reducing. So yes, it may be a trade, but a short trade would probably get you a longer target over time. Well, so it's still come back down to the bottom. So we had our trend channel on here, so it's come to our trend channel. So we've actually got two things meeting up at the moment. So what are you guys seeing? Long or a short from here? All right. So even though you might take a long position, because you'd have multiple confluence areas coming in here, but there's nothing on this particular bar at the moment saying that we need to go long. All right, you need confirmation from other factors. All right, but let's say shortly we did, it's a confluence area because you've got your resistance line. So resistance, resistance, it is a possible support area, and also going in off your trend channel. So it is an area that I would be looking at for a possible hesitation in the market to the downside. So it's testing it. So if you were short up here, so if you did manage to get in for a short position, if you were managed to get in, you would probably be taking off some of your contracts around this area. If you'd been quick enough with your market geometry and you'd drawn that up from your A to the C point, and you had confirmation here and you managed to take that short, you would have probably gotten out or reduced your position at this particular time. But now, where would you expect the market to go to? Back to an area of previous support resistance. So I would be looking for maybe a bounce back up to the midpoint of the channel or of the pitchfork. So we would be, say, looking at an area of, say, 45, 20, maybe even, depending on how time goes on, 30. But as time goes on, price is coming down to you, isn't it? So all it's done for the moment is just hug the bottom of the channel. We've come up, we've found support. So see what happened with our trend channel? It came back and it was a grind. So that's why I tend not to take long positions in a downtrending market or in a downtrending fork, because as time went down, our profit target got smaller and smaller and smaller. So, all right, well, we've come up to a confluence point here on the chart. And saying, all right, well, is this slope still in play? Which slope is in play? We don't know, right? We've got a few different slopes on this chart. All right, so we've got to look at it and say, all right, well, what's still in play? And if, for me, I know we did have this other sloping channel, but this trend channel here might be in play because we haven't actually respected the Andrews pitchfork. So now I'd probably grab that sliding parallel and I'd be moving it around and saying, all right, well, what's an area that I'd be looking at for possible resistance again to get into a possible short trade? Because my trend is down and I want to get into a short trade. So what did it do? Came up and hit my line exactly where I predicted there was going to be possible resistance. So would you guys go in for a short here? So that's your entry here. Well, with that, you'd probably need some confirmation from another chart, but this is the area that we're looking at. And what's happened? So basically we've gone in, we could have had a very small stop. All right, and what's happened over time? As time goes on, our profit target is getting further and further away. So you would have kept on monitoring this, and you would have said, all right, on the first one, you would have been looking for possible support off your trend channel down to the bottom around the 90. And it came damn close. So now we're bouncing back up again. So that was probably an example of using trend channels without and market geometry of getting into a trade and managing a trade with different areas and going with the trend. All right, but I'm probably gonna have to call it that quits for a while, guys. I need to go have spend some time with the girlfriend for a little while. It's a Friday night, and I think she's a bit pissed off that I'm talking to you guys. But so I hope I haven't bored you too much with my little bit of insight and how I look at things.
Good stuff, Chris. Really appreciate it, man. That was awesome.
All right, you're welcome.
All right, buddy. Take care.
All right, see ya.
All right, see you.